Aye, preaching the truth. Make sure you're intentional when you read your word. There's always some dope stuff about the heart of God in there that you might not have seen before, even if it's in hidden places. Let's talk about these signs in Exodus when Moses met God for the first time. When we talk about that meeting specifically, Moses was on a mountain. He's talking to God for the first time. He didn't see the burning bush. He done went to the side because who wouldn't decide to go to the side if they seen the burning bush? I gotta see why this thing ain't being consumed by fire. God is basically like, take off your shoes because this is holy ground. He reveals the plan that he had for Moses this whole time. He says, I have seen the affliction of my people, and I've come down so that I can deliver them through you, Moses. Moses is like, whoa, what are you talking about? I'm just the shepherd. No, but you're going to do it. What? He's like, you're going to go to Pharaoh. You're going to tell them that the children of Israel are about to leave his captivity, and he's going to let them go. They're going to come up on this mountain, and they're going to worship me. And Moses is like, what business do I have with Pharaoh? Keep in mind, Moses already killed somebody. He was the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He killed somebody and then ran away. Then that Pharaoh died. A new Pharaoh took his place, and now he cannot come back. He is exiled. So he has no business with Pharaoh. He's not even family anymore, and he's a criminal. So he can't even go back. On top of all of this, he already tried to free the Israelites before by playing the hero, and he got sent away. So now Moses is like, after all this time, what business do I have with the Israelites? God is like, you're going to go over there and you're going to do what I've ordained you to do. And he says, how will I know that these people are going to listen to me? And why should they listen to me? And what if they don't listen to me? God looked in his hand and said, what is that in your hand? He said, it's a staff. And he said, throw it on the floor. He threw it on the floor, it turned into a snake. He said, if they don't listen to you, they'll listen to that sign. Then he said, put your hand in your coat pocket and take it out. He did it. He took it out. And it was lepers, white as snow. He said, put it back in your coat pocket. He put it in his coat pocket. It came back out, and it was clear, completely restored. He said, if they don't listen to the first two signs, they'll listen to this sign. You'll go to the river, you'll take a handful of water, you'll pour it on dry ground, and it'll turn into blood. I was wondering, while reading these, why these signs specifically? They just seem a little too random. Why blood on the ground? I mean, and honestly, it didn't really do anything. I mean, you could call it a magic trick, but God is able to do way more than that. This is the God that brought fire down from the sky. He could burn the Egyptians away if he really wanted to. He doesn't need to do anything to convince anybody. Why these signs specifically? And why a snake? You could make it a cat. You could make it a camel. Why a snake? Let's think about the significance of each of these individual signs and try to figure out what God was doing, because God is a God of intention. So everything he does is intentional, as we should. So because of that, I was like, there has to be something deeper to these signs. So I decided to think about it like that. So let's think about a snake. Back in Genesis, the snake was said to be the most crafty of all the animals. This is the same snake that was used by the devil to deceive Eve. So we know that a snake is an indication of intense cleverness and deceit. We also know that a snake can be a symbol of rebellion, as shown by when the Israelites went to the wilderness and were bitten by snakes because of their disobedience. We also know that the snake was the national animal in Egypt, along with a whole bunch of other animals, cows and dogs, cats, but the snake was one of them. In fact, the snake was worn on the top of the crown of the pharaoh. Cool. So a national animal, the snake was. We could say that the first sign could have been read, if we wanted to translate it in English, like a quarrelsome and rebellious people, a cunning nation, or an enemy I have cast out of my hand. I pick up by the tail and tame them. When it comes to the hand in the bosom, Moses put his hand in his cloak. He took it out and it was leprous. He put it back and then it was restored when he took it out again. What does this mean? Well, we know that whatever the enemy can do, the Lord can do first, or better. We know that the enemy does not have full, complete power. We know that God has full power. The Bible says, I make good and create evil. This is not because evil comes from God, but rather because he takes responsibility for everything that happens on his green earth. When something goes down, God had to allow it. When something goes down, even though the enemy might have legal rights to do it, seeing as how the enemy accuses people before he can attack them, God still had to allow that affliction to happen. Being that he allowed the affliction to happen, he can also reverse the affliction whenever he so chooses. In that same conversation with Moses, when Moses asked, I can't even speak, how am I supposed to talk to the Israelites? He said, who is it who made the mouth? And who is it that makes the mouth mute, or the deaf man deaf? or the blind man unable to see? Is it not I, the Lord? He is saying, I am an overseer of all circumstances, and I can certainly control the outcome as I see fit, especially when people yield to my authority. So I will teach you what to say. I will be with your mouth and teach you what to say. And that's what he told to Moses. So we can identify the second sign as having this interpretation. I who afflicted you will restore you, or I who allowed you to be afflicted will restore you now. Or you could think of it like, drawing near my heart has caused you to be afflicted, but staying near my heart will cause your restoration. And so now it's the third sign. He said if they don't listen to the first two signs, go to the river, take a handful of water, pour it on the ground, on the dry ground, and it will turn into blood. What does this mean? We know that there are three things that give witness on earth. That is the spirit, the water, and the blood. We also know that Jesus equates his spirit to living water. He says that out of those who believe in me shall flow rivers of living water. He also says that he who drinks the water that I give him will have in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. That describes living water. He says that my words are spirit and life. Then in Ephesians, the word is described as washing of water. He says washing it with the water of the word when he's talking about his bride. So water can be equated to the Holy Spirit. Now, what does blood have to do with it? Blood is life. It's literally described as life in the Old Testament, because when Noah was making the covenant with God, God said you can eat any animal on the face of the earth, but you cannot eat them with their blood, because life is in the blood. Blood is life. So the life of the flesh is in the blood. To gain our redemption as children of God, God had to shed his blood in the form of Jesus Christ. So life is in the blood. Blood is a symbol of life. How can we interpret that sign? This can be interpreted like, I will pour my spirit out upon dry land. What does dry land symbolize? Dryness often symbolizes death. We can see that in, I believe it is Ezekiel. A prophet went to prophesy to dry bones, bones that were not only dead, but scattered amongst everywhere. It was a vision, and he was to prophesy to dry bones and tell them to live again. These bones had no moisture, and they certainly didn't have any life in them. Water is also a symbol of life. Jesus talked about how demons would leave the body and go to arid, dry areas where there was no rest. So dry, the opposite of dry is wet, water. So it could be that a watery place is a symbol of life, an oasis, if you would. Water was a source of sustenance for the children of Israel when they didn't have any in the wilderness, which is seen from water coming out of the rock. But let's go back to the other sign. So this prophet is supposed to prophesy to dry bones and have them live again. Well, he did that and they lived again by the Spirit of God. So dryness is a symbol of death and decay and rigidity. We can already see that the Israelites were called a stiff-necked people. This can also indicate a time of affliction and an intense time of trial. And in that sense, things dry up. Elijah was at the brook after he had already said that it wouldn't rain in Israel for 3 years because of King Ahab's rebellion. It wasn't completely 3 years at that point, but at some point that water dried up and he was supposed to move on and go somewhere else. So drying up indicates that there is a lack of resources, no longer any type of life in this area. So there's no provision for you to stay here. We can also see dryness when he refers to the heart of a person. He says that I will take out your stone heart, which is another form of condensed dirt, and I will give you a heart of flesh, which blood pumps from. Now we get to the sign. He is saying, I'm going to take water, a source of provision and a resource for life. I'm going to pour it on the dryness of your situation, and I will give you new life, and you will live again. The sign could be interpreted, I will pour my spirit out upon you, or upon your situation, or upon your heart, and you will have newness of life. Let's put it all together because it seems to be indicating a message. And it reads, a quarrelsome or rebellious people, I will take up by the tail and tame them. The affliction that I gave you or allowed you to have, I will restore you from. And by pouring out my spirit upon you, you will have new life. Or a clever nation that I cast out, I will now take you up by the tail and tame you and confound you. The affliction that I allowed my people to experience, I shall reverse. And by pouring out my spirit upon them, their hearts shall have newness of life. We know this because this affliction was technically something that the Lord predicted would happen. He said to Abraham, your seed will have 400 years of oppression in a land that they have not known, and then I will come get them, because the iniquity of the Amalekites is not yet full, meaning that there still needs to be some iniquity happening in this land before I, as God, am justified to remove them from this land and give it to y'all. We know that the consequence of rebellion and disobedience is that you are uprooted from your land. He even told the Israelites, don't think that y'all can be sinning and doing all this rebellion, because I will allow it to have rest from you and all your iniquity. Because you will pollute the land with sin, I'm gonna have to remove y'all and give the land some rest. Now, that's all well and good, but what does that got to do with you? I'm glad you asked. This message indicates God's heart for you. Even in the Old Testament, which seems to be harsh God's seasonal era, he was telling you, I can reverse your affliction. I will tame you. That means that whatever rebellion is in your heart, that means that rebellious people, that means that crafty situations, they don't compare to God. He can tame crafty situations. He can tame clever tongues. He can tame a clever people. He will reverse your affliction, and he will pour his spirit on his people, and they'll live again. We can take every one of these signs that made this amazing story, and we can break them down individually, and they still hit the same. For example, the snake, sinful nature and rebellious nature towards God. This God is not afraid of that. He's not afraid of your disobedience. He's not afraid of your rebellion. He knows that you're rebellious because of your sinful nature, and he's telling you, I can tame that. If anybody's able to tame a rebellious people, it's me, the Lord. So that's a sign of confidence. He's also saying that he can confound and destroy your enemies. Your enemies are snakes, but I can uproot them. I tame snakes. I take them up by the tail, and they have no power. With the hand in the bosom, he can say, if I allowed you to be afflicted, I can reverse the affliction. Never forget that I am the Almighty God. When Yahweh is talking, he can reverse everything. So if he allowed you to be afflicted for a season, just know that he also has the cure. And he never runs out of that. He can always reverse every affliction, because if you got afflicted, he allowed you to get afflicted. And so if he's the one that put you in that situation, he's the one that's going to be able to get you out of it with extreme power. Also, if you remember, Egypt was a place of affliction for the Israelites. And the Lord said, you shall not leave Egypt empty, but you shall spoil the Egyptians. Later, during the Passover, the Egyptians were afraid of the Israelites because of what the Lord had just done, killing all the firstborns. So they gave them all types of gold and jewels and silver and all types of stuff, which they later used to build the Ark of the Covenant, the tabernacle, all types of stuff like that. So another way to view the hand in the bosom could be, from the place of your affliction, you shall be restored. And this could be seen in terms of financial compensation or just redemption in general. So how you could use this sign in your prayer is to remind the Lord, or to ask the Lord to redeem your situation, even though you cannot see how you shall be restored in the place of your current affliction. And number 3, his spirit is the answer to dryness. If you ever feel like there's a situation in which, oh man, it's a dry spell, I don't know where my fire went, I don't know where my vigor went, it seemed like things just ain't hitting the same as they used to be. What you need to do is get closer to the Lord, because his spirit has the answer to everything, being that his spirit was associated with life. His spirit is life. And when you get closer to his spirit, he can breathe more life into your situation and have you live again. You can use these individual signs when you are praying to God to remind him who he is and his heart for you. You can use the snake when you have an enemy or you have a circumstance that you need to be handled, and he can handle that for you, especially if it's a warfare situation. When you pray that sign with your warfare prayers, you'll definitely get them answered in a quick fashion. When it comes to affliction, that hand in the bosom sign coming out, that's how you'll tell him, Lord, you have allowed me to be afflicted for a time, but Lord, you can also reverse the affliction, Lord. Whatever affliction is going on, I trust that you can reverse it and you can restore me completely to how you found me before. That's going to show him that you trust him. And it's also going to remind him that you know that he has the power to reverse every affliction that comes your way, from the enemy, from witchcraft, from whatever, even if it's from your own disobedience. You see, Moses put his hand in his bosom by himself. And so even your actions can be reversed by the Lord. Even your actions can be restored. You can be redeemed from your own actions by God. Only God can redeem you, can restore you from the actions that you can't even redeem yourself from. That's possible with his power. And last but not least, the water on the blood. His spirit is necessary. You pour that spirit out. If you feel like there's a dry spell, if you feel like, man, I just feel tired. I'm tired. And you know how many times that we felt tired as individuals, sometimes you just wake up tired. Unfortunately, that's sad, isn't it? That ain't a moment of silence for that. The people who's doing that, they're waking up and they still tired. They don't have the energy to continue to push past. When you get closer to God, you remind him of that time. You said you poured that water on ground and it became blood. You can certainly restore my situation. And he will fill you with newness of life, because you remember the first sign that Jesus ever pulled, he turned water to new wine. And that wine was better than the previous wine that was said to be the best. And so if he can breathe even better life into a situation like that, he can certainly breathe more life into you. And that life is going to be better than the life that you was looking back at. So look forward to God and don't worry about your situation. Last but not least, this is the best interpretation of it, I believe. This is a quite potent interpretation when it comes to the serpent. The serpent is seen to be the enemy. We can know that because the enemy was the one who took the serpent over. The enemy is quite fond of the serpent. The devil seems to identify a lot with him. I guess he's saying that he's one of the most craftiest animals in the park. He was also referenced to being a dragon, which is just a big serpent. God is saying, this devil that afflicts you, this devil that's trying to attack you, don't get it twisted. I'm the one who even allows him to roam around. We know this because he had to ask God to get at Job before he could even touch Job. He had to get permission from God to even touch Job. And so he needs permission from God to touch anybody. He can't just do what he wants. If he wanted to kill you and he had the ability to kill you and God wasn't in the way, you'd be dead already. The fact that you haven't died yet means that he can't kill you. The fact that he got to do all these little petty games and all these tricks and all this mind manipulation means that he cannot kill you because God has not given him the green light. He doesn't have enough evidence against you or accusations against you, which means that your iniquity is not yet full, just like the Amalekites. That means that there's still opportunity for you. That means that there's another day for you. That means it's not over for you. And it also means that God got your back. And he's saying that this devil that y'all so scared of, I'm the one that cast him out of my hand. And if I cast him out, then I can pick him up and tame him anytime I want to. He's not better than me. He's not stronger than me. He's not more powerful than me. Yahweh is God. Jesus Christ is King. He is God. And there's nobody who can ever beat him or be more powerful than him or rank above him. He is the Alpha and Omega. When you consider that this serpent has been cast out from the hand of God in any situation and can be reeled back in whenever God feels like it, that's when you know that it's not the enemy you should even be afraid of, but it's God you should revere. So whenever the enemy's getting a little too big for his britches or coming around and talking that talk like he has authority over you, you just remind him you are a snake that can be picked up by the tail by my God whenever he see fit. And go to God and pray that. Pray that God tame the enemy that is trying to come around and afflict you so that you may have newness of life and an abundance of new life, and that you have new wine in your situation. This is technically one of the first signs that God ever performed on earth through a prophet. And we see that one of the first signs in the New Testament with Jesus as a prophet he performed was water to wine. So it seems that God, although he's a God of new things, he still likes revisiting his old little signs here and there. The Bible is so intentional. When you read it and you read it asking God to give you a revelation about what he's saying, he can bless you in numerous ways. I didn't even know that these signs were so impactful and they meant so much, but they clearly articulate a story about what he wanted to do with the Israelites, what his intention was for the Israelites, what his intention was for the enemies, and what his intention is for us, even living today. And it's crazy because he told Moses, if they don't hearken to your voice, they will definitely hearken to the voice of the signs. And a voice is an expression of somebody's will. So these signs was definitely supposed to tell a story. And it seems like they told it. They definitely conveyed a message. And I don't even think Moses knew what the message was. And so that's why it's important as believers today that we read our Bible with the intention of deciphering the messages that he's hidden in there, because it's a love letter with multiple different caveats that he wants us to find. And he wants us to dive in that word because we might just be missing something. that could change our lives for the better. And that's some powerful truth.